We're in Nehemiah chapter 2. We're looking at this scene where Nehemiah has mustered his courage and clarity of mind to ask the king, Artaxerxes of Persia, if he can go back to Jerusalem, which is a long trip. It's going to be an expensive trip, and rebuild the city, get the walls put back together, the gates put back together. And it's a big request. It's a big deal, as we talked about yesterday, for Artaxerxes. It will affect his life. It will affect the effectiveness of carrying out business in the kingdom. So it's a big deal. But an interesting contrast here between the request that we're looking at in Nehemiah 2, where Nehemiah is going to ask Artaxerxes, and contrasting that with what it was like when Esther, a generation earlier, had to go before the king to ask him a request, that's Xerxes, is that Esther had control over when she did it. The timeline was totally up to her. At least I got the impression as we were going through the book of Esther that she walked in, she was received, the king extended the golden scepter to her. That means, I'm not going to kill you. You can come in, you can talk to me. You look beautiful. It's great to see you. What's on your mind? But she read the room. She looked at maybe who was in there, what all the various factions that were represented in the room were, and she clearly calculated on the fly, we need to string this along a little bit. And so because she had control of the timeline, she just invited him to a banquet. And then, as you'll recall, in the banquet, they get together and she feels it out. And she's like, no, this isn't quite the right time either. How did she know that? Was it shrewdness? Was it the superintendence of God? Probably both, because what happens in between the first banquet and the second banquet that Esther ends up inviting Xerxes to is that everything breaks loose and bounces in the favor of Esther and Mordecai. Then if you've never read Esther, you didn't listen to the last season, don't worry about a thing, but it'll all make sense in a minute. So Esther had a difficult conversation that she needed to have with the king, but she was in charge of the timeline. Totally. She had him on a string. Nehemiah, in chapter 2, does not have control of the timeline. Maybe if he's teasing out the I'm sad thing just one time and one time only, and Artaxerxes sees it and questions him about it the first time that he notices Nehemiah being sad, maybe Nehemiah has control. But Nehemiah's not doing anything or really saying anything. He's just there. And in whatever way, either through his countenance or maybe some sort of physical manifestation, his clothing or ash or something, he's giving the impression of sadness. It's not up to him whether or not the king asks him or inquires of him. He might have to do that for a week on end, a month on end. The king might never notice. Who knows? So it's a very interesting contrast between these two back-to-back books that both hinge on a meeting in the throne room with the king. Well, one, the protagonist is in control of the timing. The other, the protagonist is not. And with Esther being in control of the timing of it, she gets to control who's in the room. Now, ultimately, she decides that who she wants in the room are a few select eunuchs who she has built sympathy with since she was first introduced to the court years and years earlier when she was just a contestant in the beauty pageant contest, when she was just some rando virgin from the countryside who was a part of this contest to become queen. She's been currying favor with all of these people. She's been lovely in the court for all this time, and I think she knew which eunuchs she wanted to have in the room, which attendants, and she clearly wanted to have Haman in the room, the enemy, the bad guy, and she clearly wanted to have Xerxes in the room and nobody else. So she fully controlled the situation so that her ask would have the best possible chance of hitting. Again, Nehemiah's situation is different. He doesn't get to control who's going to be in the room when Artaxerxes decides to bring it up or inquire about what's going wrong. And as a result, well, the queen is in the room. And that's where we left off last time. And I've had a whole night to think about this. I listened to my own episode a couple of times. Sometimes I don't do that. Sometimes I'll wait a week and then you let it fade in my memory a little bit and then catch up. But I listen to this podcast too, and I really enjoy it. It's very different making it from just consuming it and kind of double dipping and learning about it. But this one was really on my mind. And so I went and listened to it a couple times last night and then again this morning. And here's where I'm at. If I'm Nehemiah, maybe I want the queen in the room because maybe the queen is super grateful to Nehemiah for all the things that he's done to support her husband. And Maybe she's always the one who he suspected has kind of been advocating for him behind the scenes, like, hey, woman's intuition kind of thing. This Nehemiah guy, he's got your best interest at heart. Make sure you keep him around. He's good. Maybe Nehemiah detects that, and he was hoping that it would be a day when the queen would be there, and then maybe he decided to make sure that his sadness was on display when she was there. I mean, maybe he anticipated that she would be even more emotionally dialed than her husband, or maybe the king himself is more emotionally dialed when the queen is around. Could be that. Maybe strategically he was hoping to catch the king on a day when the queen was in the courtroom as well. Maybe he was hoping to catch the king on a day when the queen was not in the courtroom, because even though she's great, she's super and everything, she still has a lot at stake here, and her presence might cause the king to balk at Nehemiah's request because, as we discussed yesterday, of all the ways this could affect her life. Again, if the king dies from getting poisoned by a cup, she dies too. If assassins kill the king, they're going to clean out the entire royal family. So where we left off last time is that Nehemiah looks sad. Artaxerxes, the Achaemenid king of kings of Persia, says, why do you look so sad? You don't normally look sad. This can be nothing but sadness of heart. What's up? And then Nehemiah says, may the king live forever. Why wouldn't I be sad when my hometown is in ruins, the place where my fathers are buried, the gates have been destroyed by fire? And the king says, all right, what is it you want? Well, that's a big moment. Nehemiah collects himself, prays to the God of heaven. He answers the king, quote, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my fathers are buried so that I can rebuild it. Verse 6, then the king, with the queen sitting beside him, asked me, here it comes, which way are we going to go? Is it going to be, how dare you? Where do you get off? Who do you think you are? Or will it be, what do you need? Well, here's what you get. The king answers, quote, how long will your journey take, and when will you get back? Now, look, I understand that not everybody is fluent in adult male conversation. I would like to think I'm fluent in adult male conversation. I've got a lot of friends. I'm lucky that way. And some of those friends, we use lots and lots of words with each other, but I got a lot of friends where we don't use a lot of words, just say things without saying a lot of things. Seems like the older a guy gets, the less words it takes to say a thing. And especially somebody who's a dude, who's in a position of authority, who's paying attention. A lot of times they will say a lot with not a lot of words. And this line right here, this whole really line of conversation, sounds like how my granddads talked, both of them. They didn't need to say much to tell me exactly how the things were. So you'll notice Artaxerxes never actually says yes here, at least not in a literal, explicit sense, but rather the way he phrases the follow-up question is yes. I promise you, Nehemiah's heart leapt with joy as soon as these words escaped the king's lips, because he knew that the king's answer was yes, and he also knew there's no way the king's answer is going to be yes without also supporting this endeavor and truly having my back in it. He's not just going to give me leave, he's going to give me his blessing. He's going to help me achieve this thing. And with this very minimalistic, very chill answer that we get from the king as the queen sits regally next to him, and no doubt whether she agreed or not, affirmed with her body language the decision. With this answer, the plot of this book is now off and running, because like Nehemiah, our hearts as the reader leap with joy because, hey, I don't have a city that needs to be repaired. I don't have any gates that need to be repaired, but I want an adventure. I'm reading a story and I want to go on the adventure and I want to have fun. And now I know we're going to do it. We're taking a road trip. We're going to go fight off the hordes that are threatening Jerusalem, and we're going to try to rebuild this thing. We're going to have a construction, combat, political thriller, road trip adventure. Sign me up. Now, surely right now there are some of you who are thinking, I share your enthusiasm. This is why I enjoy this so much, because the Bible is interesting and the stories are all good and it's really fun to see where the adventure goes next. I'm with you. I can't wait. But maybe there are a few of you at this point are thinking, no, I'm done. Nope. Today's the last day. I've been thinking about being done with this podcast's a turd. And it is time to wrap it up. I'm finished. This is my last one. I just decided right now, maybe knock something off the desk to help just emotionally solidify that decision. I respect that. I get it. It's a good technique. But my friends, I'd urge you to go one more day. I wouldn't quit today, because tomorrow, even though the sources are real sketchy, there's some stuff that we do know from history that fills in a little bit of this backstory that is super juicy and super interesting about the king and the queen related to things we've been talking about for the last couple of days. And so, maybe like 2 days from now would be a good day to quit forever, but I wouldn't do it tomorrow. But, it's the internet. You do you, whatever makes the most sense. So tomorrow, more from Nehemiah 2 and this dynamic, dramatic conversation, and also some stuff from Ctesias and Herodotus, people who lived back in the day and knew this stuff firsthand about some of the details going on behind the text here. It's going to be a hoot. All right, that's it. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.